Revolutionary levetos to the suffering masses of our people. Revolutionary salutations, fellow compatriots, members of the SJW Social Justice Warriors community. In the context of solidarity, my name today is Allan Moyo, the prosecuted and yet persecuted cadre who has spent more than 50 days under the dungeons of terror, inside the dungeons of terror of Ngadziore. Today, I aim to articulate on three particular issues. Number one, the persecution and criminalization of the students' movement. Number two, it's of course the state of the economy and how it's impacting on students during the lockdown. And number three, I'm going to highlight on the state of the higher and tertiary education sector. To begin with, it is quite devastating to note how the students' movement is being persecuted under the regime of Ngadziore. We have an increased rate of students who are being arrested, particularly Allan Moyo, who has spent 50 and more days in prison right now as I speak. And it's such a worrying trend that we purport ourselves to be led by people who respect democracy, and yet they are autocratic. We suspect that we are being led by people who respect the rule of law, but yet they are there to persecute those who are there to fight for our freedom. And it's such a worrying trend. When I go to the state of higher and tertiary education sector, it is quite worrying that the right to education, which is enlisted and enshrined within Section 75 of the Constitution, has not been granted, has not been listened to. The affordability of education, the accessibility of education has not been well respected during this lockdown. There are three issues. Of course, Zimbabwe is in a lockdown, but this is a third world country, which of course has introduced e-learning, a quite scintillating initiative, but issues surrounding the accessibility of education, connectivity, has not been addressed. The content, the online curriculum has not been addressed, and also various issues pertaining to the inaccessibility of digital devices, the network challenges themselves, in which we have students who are in the remote areas, are not being addressed. So all these are issues which ought to be addressed, and we should fight on to make sure that education becomes right. Upon the economic impact on the students during lockdown, we have seen the escalation, or we have seen the deteriorating economic conditions. It's quite devastating, comrades, to note that the shambolic state of the economy is disadvantaging students during this lockdown. Prices are going up, and students are failing to make sure that they acquire a basic standard of living during this lockdown. Commodities are high, basic needs are high in terms of the prices, so that students cannot afford the basic standard of living, and it's all because of the neoliberal economic policies which were introduced by one Ngadzore during, of course, from the November 2017 period. The austerity measures which came, the new dispensation which came, and all these policies which make sure that companies under one category are exempted from paying tax, of which tax should make sure that it services the economy. As revenue, tax should make sure that it services the general public. So that's I critically state as the president of the Zimbabwe National Students Union that all these three issues are key during this pandemic and should be well respected.
And then, President, what do you propose as the solution? You spoke of the various challenges being faced as a result of e-learning facilities. What do you propose as the most viable solution going forward?
The most viable solution that we give to the government of Zimbabwe during such a lockdown, when they have seen that e-learning is an appropriate manner or appropriate way to learn, I would refer you to a letter which was written by the Zimbabwe National Students Union on the 17th of April, articulating that, number one, the government of Zimbabwe, through its Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, should engage all mobile network operators, the MNOs, to make sure that the ac.zw platforms or student portals are accessible at a zero rate. Failure to which they should engage and make sure that they dialogue along the creation or establishment of a cheap or affordable e-learning data bundle. We also propose at the Zimbabwe National Students Union that each student be given at least 220 per term or per semester, so that they can buy a digital device they can use, particularly for those who are in the rural setups of Zimbabwe, so that they can at least choose something to be online, because rescuing the academic here is our vision as a students' movement.